Hello and welcome to Through the Big Book with Dr. Ben. My name's Ben and I'm an alcoholic. In this episode we'll be starting chapter 4, which is titled We Agnostics. We Agnostics is this is where you'll really need a highlighter and a pen, and I just encourage you to pause this whenever at any point. You don't have to bang all this stuff out. Like, by all means, take your time with it. Be introspective and think about things when you're answering some of these questions, and just again, as we read in the spiritual or in the appendix about the spiritual experience, I just encourage you to keep an open mind, be honest with yourself, and be willing. You've made it this far, so keep your willingness up, and let's dive in here. So it says, in the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you can't quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. To one who feels he's an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. Okay, so they're introducing a couple of new words here called atheist and agnostic. A is the root for without or no, and theist is God, or we use higher power and God both in AA. So it's there is no God. An atheist is saying there is no God, which is, in its own right, contradicts itself in the first place. But you're basically just saying there is no God. There's no God. There's no such thing as God. Agnostic, again, without or no, and nausea is knowledge. So you're kind of indifferent. You're saying that I don't know. There might be such thing as what you're saying is God, but I just don't know anything about it. It's just not my thing. I'm indifferent. I'm without knowledge. So it says, but it isn't so difficult. About half of our original fellowship were exactly of that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. There's a lot of self-help books and stuff that are great. I honestly love self-help books. I love all those kinds of things, and any way that I can learn to improve myself and add value to myself so I can, you know what I mean? It's nothing against those. It's just not enough to overcome alcoholism. It says, but we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. It says lack of power. That was our dilemma. Just that simple. Just lack of power. We're not talking about political power or financial power or brain power or any of that. It's just general power to overcome not drinking. That's what we don't have here. So it says we had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, the one word sentence. But where and how are we to find this power? So again, it's not a lack of faith or academics or Bible studies or whatever it is that you're into. It's not about that. It's just the power. You're not getting power. It says, Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. That means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times, we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we've reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. This is so unbelievably common from, people that I've sponsored and people that I've seen in meetings. This is the most common hang-up for people who don't stay sober. The struggle with the program, basically, is just this concept of a higher power. So before I open up more on this, I'm going to keep reading for a little while. It says, we know how he feels. We've shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we'd abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered by the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak and even cowardly. We look upon this world with warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. All right, so I'm going to start unpacking on some of this stuff. I related so much of this stuff. I grew up in a household where, science and education and medicine and stuff were logic, were worshipped over everything. There's no reason to need God because we can figure things out ourselves. And if you can't figure it out, you're not thinking hard enough, or you're not smart. You know what I mean? Like, there's an answer for everything, and it comes through intellect. That's just how it was in the house, And there was a neighbor, neighbors right across the street who were very religious, and they had, a license plate on their car that said something about God. You know what I mean? I don't want to say what it was right now, but it was basically a worshiping God thing on their license plate, and they had stickers on their car and the whole thing, and I just we just kind of laughed at it like it was silly. It was just beneath us. So I really related to this a lot. And so back to the power deal. This whole book is about clearing the blockages that prevent you from receiving the power that comes from a higher power, from whatever your conception of that power is, and then we channel it to others, to help others. And that's basically the whole program summed up, is unblocking ourselves to receive, spirit or power from, and to use it to help others. That is AA and the whole thing. And so all these steps are going to be unblocking the blockages, if you will. I don't know how else to describe that. Removing the blockages so you can receive power. And of course, you don't just want to keep all the power to yourself. You don't want to keep all the spiritual power to yourself. So that's why we have chapter 7 and stuff, and we give it away, and we keep going to meetings and that sort of thing. So it says, yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. This is so important. It's so beautiful too. It says, I don't have to believe in your conception of God, of a higher power. I don't have to believe in anything that, I don't have to agree with any of that stuff. All I have to do is be willing to believe in just something. Just be willing to believe in something greater than myself. There's and people use all kinds of acronyms, for God. They have like group of drugs or good orderly direction or whatever. If that works for you, use it. I know people that have been sober for a long time that use those concepts. They still use those same concepts. They because it was very tangible for them. They could wrap their head around it, and they stayed sober. And people who are super religious might laugh at that, but at the same time, these people are staying sober. It really truly does not matter what road you take to get to Denny's, as long as you get to Denny's. That's an old joke that my old sponsor Hal used to say. So anyway, and it's not like you're going to figure this thing out. You're not going to be able to fully comprehend God ever. No one does. If they say that they've got it all figured out, they are lying. It's just beyond sight and hearing and smell and taste and our little senses. It's beyond that. It's incomprehensible. Absolutely. Beyond all of our greatest minds' capacity of conceiving, without doubt. So then, so that's a starting place. It's just the willingness. Are you even willing to give this a shot? Not do you have it all figured out. Not do you understand what God is and have it all figured out. Just, are you willing to give this a shot, to move forward, to seek? That's it. That's all it takes. I came in here with a bunch of prejudice. I didn't believe in any of that stuff. I joke around and say, God belongs on the same shelf as the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. It's for kids. It's not for me. And for weak people, for stupid people who can't solve their own problems. And I came in here with that attitude, but I was willing to give something a shot because I didn't have any options left. And if that's where you're at, that's a great spot because it's worked for me. Obviously, I've come a really long way with this, I think. I still have a long way to go, but that's a great starting point. Wherever you're at is a great starting point. So it said, much to our relief, we discovered that we didn't need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, much like what I just explained to you, I had zero conception, was sufficient to make it the approach and to effect a contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. So if you have a problem with like Him, with it being, with your power greater than yourself being a Him, call it something else. No one cares what you call God in AA. Outside they will. People start wars and all kinds of stuff over what you call your conception of God, but not in AA. We just don't care. I joked around about like whenever I was early on, I fancy myself to have a good sense of humor, and said if God, is about all this, then, I can call Him funny names and stuff, and He won't, shoot a lightning bolt up my butt, whatever. And I did it, and I just said, funny name. I'm not going to say what it was because it was kind of vulgar. I said, I need your help and blah, blah, blah. And I just gave it a shot. And I didn't get any lightning bolts, I got help. And so I was like, all right, I don't think He cares. I don't think whatever cares what I say, what words I use, as long as I'm giving this a shot, as long as I'm willing. It says, we found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek Him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, and never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. We believe it's open to all men. So, again, this was written in the 30s. And the social situation in the 30s was very different than it is in the 2020s, the 20s of the 20th or 21st century. So this was a really radical concept. And it still kind of is in parts of the world, unfortunately, that anybody who wants to seek God can find him. And, that was really cool to me because I thought that I was beyond saving, and I thought that I'd messed up too bad, and then I was too screwed up for anything or anybody or any God to fix me. I believed it. I knew that as a fact. That was a fact to me. It felt that way. But I just learned that it was a belief, and that belief could be changed. And because I sought and I've found, and because of that, I haven't drank for a couple of 24s now, as we say. But it doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter if you've done the most atrocious things for your whole life. You can still do this. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are and how smug you think you are. You live in the highest tower of Babylon. You're the richest and blah. That doesn't matter. You can find God despite your arrogance and your ego and all that stuff. You're not that big of a deal. I promise you. You're not that special and all that stuff. None of that's going to keep you from finding God. So when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. Okay, so it's not a God of my conception. Again, I think I defined this in another episode, but what we're saying here is, it's like a definition. I don't know what the definition of God is. Actually, I think I can look it up real quick. But if I look up God in Wikipedia, you're just going to get this huge, massive definition and article on what God is. And, I don't know if reading it is going to bring me any closer to finding God. It might, I don't know. I'm not going to spend any time doing it. I'm sorry. But this is just a concept. God is a concept, a word we use to define this power greater than ourselves. If you live in a certain part of the world, you may say Allah. Or if you belong to a certain, or maybe people say Jesus, or people say Buddha, or people say the universe, or the whatever it is. There's a lot of them, and if any of those ruffle your feathers, you're in the right space, because some of those ruffled my feathers too. I instantly it would shut me down as soon as I would hear some of that stuff. Just like, nope, no, I don't care. So I had to build my own conception of God. God is just this. It's a energy. It's a spirit. It's something that's out there that people have been worshiping for a really long time. And in my opinion, all people from around the world who are seeking this power greater than themselves are all kind of going to the same spot. They just take different roads and they name the streets different things, but it's all the same. It is all the same. We're all going to the same spot. So from here forward, that's what I mean when I say God. I don't mean to offend you if you believe that the name of that concept is French toast or remote control. I don't care. Whenever I say that, you can substitute it for yourself. Every time I say God, you can think, oh, French toast. I submit my life to French toast. Whatever that thing is, whatever you call it, that's fine. I encourage you. If you want to name it, I don't care. The Great Fupa, then call it the Great Fupa. Nobody here cares. Nobody. We'll laugh. It's funny. It's not a big deal. We don't take anything too seriously in AA, especially your concept. It's probably not going to sway anybody no matter what it is. But the thing is that it's important that you find something that fits for you, something that you can turn your will and your life over to. So, if it's something that's a preset, a prefix religion, if you will, then that's fine. If it's not, if you've got your own little thing, the Great Fupa, and you got your own picture drawn and all that stuff, then start there and do that. Just go for it, man. Go for it and let go. Let go and go all out and give this God thing a chance, okay? So from here forth, I'm just going to refer to it as God. So this applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Don't let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from asking yourself what they mean to you, from honestly asking yourself. So at this point, it's a great starting point to ask yourself, to pause this video here shortly and ask yourself, what do spiritual terms mean to you? If I say spiritual terms, what do you even think they are? What are spiritual terms? What are some of those words? I was asked to write down all these things on a piece of paper and then come back, call him whenever I was done, and and prayerfully ask myself what these things mean to me. If you want examples, and this is just what I came up with. I think I don't actually have no idea. It's been a number of years now, but just to get you primed, you might say God. What does God mean to you? What does the word mean to you? Is that offensive? And it makes you think of this, or does it make you think of Christmas? Is Christmas one? Is Allah? Is fasting? Is peace? Is honesty? Whatever. Just write some things down. What if there is such a thing as a higher power? What do you think this higher power would be about? Is this God pissed at you? Is he going to shoot lightning bolts up your butt? Is he loving? Is he going to forgive? Is he about peace? Is he about war? Is he about you making as much money as you possibly can and spending it on, what? You ask yourself. You can start from scratch, or you can open another book. If you're like me, you're like, I have no idea. I have zero moral compass at all. I need some ideas here. Open some other books, man. Be curious. Read. Go to the library. Search some things out. What does honesty mean? Just not lying to you, not stealing from you. There's quite a bit of context to honesty that you can start off with, which is the spiritual principle involved in step 1. So I'd encourage you, pause it here and ask yourself, what are spiritual terms and what do they mean to you? And I will meet you back in the next episode.